sustainability, things that are healthy in nature, both financially and physically for Delaware. And so, you know, as they weed through opportunities, this one kind of catches your eye because there's a potential to employ 100 Delaware.
Right.
And this is very, very, very early in the stages of even consideration. You know, the first they heard about it was really last week, although the discussions to get these guys were actually months and months and months ago. But we're on our very first step of due diligence.
Well, when you stated that the employees, 100 employees, would not have any previous training, from the article in the Arizona EDU stated, yes, you must have.
Well, these guys specifically would start a training program, you're correct, to grow any type of, actually call it manufacturing, not farming, which is odd to me, but that's what it is. You know, it would basically, they would create the whole work environment. They would take Delaware in, they would propose to send Delaware to be trained at an existing facility. Bring those trained employees here and build the operation from the ground up while training people from the top down. So training is, and education is very, very important. But I think probably what I was trying to hit on is you didn't need a college degree to start out. You could, you know, we would take the basic guy that could have a driver's license and show up to work and start him out and train.
Okay, so you're actually looking at purchasing more land?
No,
Yeah, I
ma'am.
thought it was
No.
to utilize the land that we already have in Lawrence, but
Right.
that's
No.
not the case?
No, ma'am.
No,
ma'am.
and it's not new land, Susan, but trust me, I mean, we're not even to that stage.
well.
I
No.
mean, we are going to very much take this piece by piece apart. Tim will probably hate us by the time this is over because,
You know, that was probably the first thing that we looked at, and not taking up a bunch of your time, is we would be much better to go lease a piece of property as to build one. But as the Vice Chief said, you know, that we're not even there yet.
Right.
So this was just kind of an initial report to say, you know, we are out looking, they're out looking for opportunities, and as we hear them, as you see people come in and out, you know, they want to tell you who's here, why they're here, what we're talking about.
and we just want to make sure we keep you all updated.
Well, on a lighter note, Susan, you probably already also researched that the JOM, or the Department of Justice, has already said that all the tribes can have marijuana, raise it and sell it.
This has nothing to do with this discussion.
I know, but let me tell you, I was saying on a lighter note, people I talk to hydroponics with, and they go, wink, wink, that is synonymous with marijuana. They said, you're growing lettuce? Oh, that kind of lettuce, yeah. Anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in because that's the elephant in the room right now for tribes, and I am on that.
They say lettuce per pound is the easiest, most forgiving to grow, and it's what everyone buys and ships everywhere. You potentially, on paper, you couldn't grow enough for someone like U.S. Foods to buy it wherever they ship it. So
Yeah,
lettuce,
I read it was tomatoes.
yes, probably tomato, lettuce.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Oh, wait. Chief, Titus has his hand up.
Yes. Question real quick. In regard to economic development, have you come up with any thought or plans in regard to all that land we have in Kansas now that's sitting up there? We should be able to do something with it.
Well, part of what our discussions have been was to find something that makes sense to utilize that land up there.
Do you have an exact acreage, how much is up there?
Do I? I think it's 91 acres.
I've heard several different versions of that.
Nobody knows about it, that's another good question.
Some people say 92, 101, 91.2.
I don't mind. We could probably look that up for you and get the survey for it. You know, I know we're not talking about this, but we're just discovering this. These guys don't want to do one building. They want to do 10 in the central United States because everything rots. So potentially, you know, there's an idea, put 10 of them there. I know that's a sod farm, and as we look into the future for opportunities, that'll certainly be considered.
In regard to the hydroponics, what kind of distribution system do you have set up? Truck drivers?
Yes,
Interstate,
we're
out of state?
actually, what we would be is a wholesaler. With lettuce like this, you go in and you prove that you can grow it. And then you negotiate a contract. Actually, they'll come running to you with someone like US Foods or Cisco, and they'll say, we want it all. And they'll just back up the trucks. Now, in this plan, one of the things that we were considering is 10% of that grow space would not be for lettuce. It would be for tomatoes, strawberries, cucumbers, whatever would benefit tribal members, and would have that as an actual distribution point there to bring here and give to tribal members. But they would basically come get it to us, get it from us.
Charles.
Charles. I'd like to compliment the council on keeping us informed on things they're looking at, rather than letting us know after in fact they did something. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Charles.
Can I put that in?
Can you speak into the mic?
Thank you.
While Tim and David are up here in front, could I get a motion of this council to discuss a resolution about forming a company known as out of the order that is on the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it. I'll second it.
The motion's been made and seconded to place discussion about resolution 2014-52 in front of the other resolutions, so that David McCullough can address the issue of what we may be doing in this meeting. And I would ask, first of all, our secretary to read that resolution. Okay. It's been moved and seconded to put it out of agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I would ask, first of all, our secretary, Nikki Michael, to read resolution 2014-52.
A resolution of the Tribal Council of the Delaware Tribe of Indians authorizing the filing of articles of organization for Tahkoh pt2 LLC to be wholly owned by the Delaware Tribe of Indians. For some of you that don't know what Tahkoh means, it just means turtle in Lenape. Resolution 2014-52, and I will skip down to the fourth, whereas the Tribal Council has determined an entity to be known as Tahkoh pt2 should be established under the laws of the Delaware Tribe of Indians and that the entity shall be controlled entirely 100% by the Delaware Tribe of Indians. And whereas the Tribal Council has determined that the Articles of Organization attached hereto should contain a waiver of sovereign immunity as set forth in the attached Articles of Organization. Whereas the Tribal Council, as a member of the LLC on behalf of the Delaware Tribe of Indians, desires to approve the operating agreement attached hereto for the purposes of managing Tahoe E2. Now therefore be resolved that the Tribal Council of the Delaware Tribe of Indians authorizes the attached Articles of Organization should be filed consistent with tribal law, creating Tahoe E2 as wholly owned LLC of the Delaware Tribe of Indians. Be it further resolved that the Tribal Council of the Delaware Tribe of Indians authorizes the waiver of sovereign immunity for Tahoe E2 LLC to the extent as set forth in the attached Articles of Organization.
David McCullough, and as a way of introduction to our attorney, David McCullough, I would like to say that David is one of the most adept attorneys that I've ever had dealings with, and there's been several of them. David, could you explain to our council and our members exactly what we would be doing by
Okay. I'll try to stand still. I can't tell. Basically, what we're doing here is what.
It's not working.
Just use that one up. This one works, doesn't it?
Yeah.
No. There we go. That's green. That's green. That must mean it's working.
Green is gold.
Okay, good. I'll just kind of move it over here. I don't need much. What we're doing, or what the tribe is doing under this proposal is creating a company, Tahoe E2. It started out as E square, so I have to kind of stop myself because it's an environmental engineering type company. What the tribe has done, which is what a lot of tribes do, is take an internal analysis or an evaluation of the assets that the tribe has. One area when you really research the tribe, and which I've done recently in this area, is the tribe, like a lot of tribes, has a long involved history of not engineering but the environmental side. And this goes from NAGPRA to certain environmental issues, to clean air, clean water, and this tribe over the years has had involvement in a lot of these areas. What we're doing is we're harnessing that and creating this company, which will be Tahoe E2. Now, what we're doing tonight is creating the company. As I said, anybody has any involvement, I'll have people come in all the time and I want to create an LLC because I have this idea to do something. So we got to create an LLC. 2 years later, nothing's ever happened on it. I don't anticipate that's what's going to happen tonight, but what we would be doing here, or what the council would be doing, is creating the LLC. Now, it's created under the laws of the Delaware tribe. Approximately 2 years ago, in September of 2012, the Delaware Tribal Council created the Tribal LLC Act, which basically models just what any state LLC is, limited liability company, what any of them are. And there's a provision in there which allows the tribe to establish their own LLCs. So the tribe can just anytime go in and create one. So the resolution tonight creates the LLC. After that's done, then the council, as the sole member of the LLC, would meet and approve an operating agreement. And that's just kind of like the constitution for this company and how you're going to operate. And then you proceed forward from there. And I also want to address one thing real quick that was in the resolution. I know as a tribal member, ears always pop up, but that's anytime there's any mention of a waiver of sovereign immunity in there, what exactly it means. The waiver of sovereign immunity that is in this document, in the articles, and will be in the operating agreement, is the waiver that's required by the federal government and by the Small Business Administration for any tribal entity that wants to become an 8A certified entity. There is in the regulations language. And what you're doing is you're waiving sovereign immunity only to government contracts. So in other words, if Taco E2 went out and contracted with a private company to provide some type of environmental services, unless you grant an independent waiver in that contract, you don't waive. The waiver is only for government contract purposes, and logically, if you think about it, the government's not going to award you a contract if you have the ability to engage subcontractors or other people to do work for you, and then you don't pay them, and then there's no recourse. That's the theory behind it. The government just requires it, and it only goes to the extent that, and I wish I brought a copy of it, the articles with me, but it only goes to the extent of that it's required in the SBA section of the federal of the code, the CFR, not CFR, that's tribal, but the federal code. It's a very limited, and it's limited when you're acting in the government contract area, and it only applies once you get your 8A. It doesn't even waive no sovereign immunity until you reach the 8A status. Now, the purpose of this, and let me make sure, I always want to make sure I'm clear. Does anybody want me to define what 8A status is? Okay, I don't like throwing around acronyms and then suddenly. There's a process in the federal government, in the SBA, the Small Business Administration, that you can obtain what's called a Section 8A status. And individuals can do it. It's for minority, it's for socially or economically disadvantaged individuals. But there's a specific provision that allows tribes to obtain the 8A status. And the 8A status is very beneficial. A lot of tribes are doing it. The 8A status is very beneficial because you can do a lot of things that even other 8As, individual 8As, can't do. There's all kinds of opportunities there. The question is, how do we get there? This tribe started about a year ago in moving forward with DFMS as an 8A. For various reasons, that's really not feasible at this point. So the idea is, how can we move forward quickly? Because quickly is the key. If you're an individual, you have to be in business for 2 years to even apply for an 8A status. If you're a tribe, there's no 2-year requirement. However, the further you are removed from being in business for 2 years, the greater your burden is to show that you can be successful at the business you're engaging in. So the idea is to get this business established tonight. This will be this becomes the 2-year starting point. So you get it tonight, now you're 2 years. There's been discussions, and the council believes that there's an opportunity that we could at least obtain one contract within the next month. And it's not gonna provide any jobs for anyone. Matter of fact, it's gonna be way overseas. But there's a possibility of getting a contract to get us started. And then we move along, and then as we move to 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, whatever, if we're developing the company to the point that we feel comfortable at that point of making an application for 8A certification, then we'll immediately plug it in. But we don't start the clock running. We can't even play the game until we form the company. And then what the company does, whether it succeeds, whatever it does, will obviously be up to the council leadership, because they are the sole member of it'd be just like if I went out and started an 8A myself, I would be the sole member, the council is the sole member. So, but what this resolution does tonight is it creates the company. We can start our 2-year time clock, and any time between now and then, the 2 years, we can go ahead and make the application when the tribe feels comfortable that we could be successful at making the application. I'm sorry, I don't want to point out something, Chief.
I have a question.
If I can, I'll just point to him, Chief. Okay, I think he's authorized me, okay.
Yeah. Quick question.
Yeah.
In regard to the 8A, I know there were some tribes who acquired their status and so forth, but they started subcontracting out and getting multiple government contracts. And that was closely looked at by the federal government. Does that change anything for the program, or does it have that any?
Well, yeah, unfortunately, that all occurred, really it came to a head about 4 years ago. And honestly, it involved the ANCs, the Alaska Native Corporations. And it basically was Congressman Young out of Alaska and Senator, can't think, name skips my mind right now, but there were a lot of instances where it was argued that the tribal 8A was nothing more than a front. Yeah, it was a pass through. You had a large company over here, and they got a tribal 8A. And let me tell you what. Shut me off if I get talking too long. I get excited about this stuff. But here's why it happens, and here's why it happens in the tribal environment. If I go out and get an 8A as an individual, the maximum amount of contract work I can have at any time under contract is $4 million. If I'm a tribe, there's no limit. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean in the overall process? Well, you have a lot of large companies, especially government contractors, who have to, let's say they get a $500 million contract, and they have to have $40 million of that contract work done by small businesses. They have to contract out that $40 million. Well, if they're going out to non-tribal small businesses, that's 10 small businesses that they have to deal with to allocate that $40 million, because there's only $4 million per person. If there's a tribe involved, they can give that tribe the whole $40 million contract. Now, if you can put yourself in a management position, that's a heck of a deal, because now I'm only dealing with one subcontractor instead of 10 subcontractors that I'm running around after. So tribes have a huge advantage in a lot of areas. But yes, it was very negative. It certainly has had some impact on, I think it makes the application process a little bit more difficult. I think they do look behind it a lot more to see what's there, to see what other tentacles are there. I'm sorry, yeah.
You just made a statement about getting an 8A contract within a few months or whatever, and it's going to be overseas. And I'm curious about what benefit does the tribe get for having an overseas contract?
Okay, number one, it's not an 8A contract, because we don't have 8A certification. The thing is, how do you get started? Generally, you have to wait the 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're gonna pull in there and let's say you would say in 6 months we want to make an application. Once during that 6 months, we've got to do some work, because what we have to do is show we're capable of doing the work. So there is an opportunity, potentially. You know, we set up the company and then we see if anything grows out. Yeah, there's an opportunity potentially to take a subcontract from a group that does basically all their work in the Pacific realm, Pacific region, Guam. Yeah, Hawaii, Guam, all out through there. This particular company that we're talking to is a former 8A company. So they've gone through the 8A program and graduated out. There's incentives for them to help people get into the 8A program. There's incentives, there's mentoring programs and the like that are recognized by the federal government. But the fact is, they have expressed an interest in helping. This first contract would be essentially a shovel job, but it would be a subcontract. And there would be a couple of employees hired. It probably wouldn't last 3 weeks. But if we perform it, that's just one contract we perform. And now we're starting to build our bona fides as we go forward to make this application. I talk with my hands a lot, I'm sorry, it's the attorney side of me. I'm always trying to convince a jury somewhere.
No, I know what you're saying, though.
Yeah, and then I'll get back to you.
I was just curious, what happened to the 8A application that was submitted last month or the month before that was associated with PFMS?
Right.
Where did that one go? Is it kind of lost in space, or?
It came back to us, so right now it's not in the process.
So why did it come back to you? What were the mistakes? Why did it come back to you?
Well, there's a lot of reasons why it came back, but yeah, I mean, generally, every application is going to come back.
Right.
Because there's no such thing as a perfect application.
So
That's
did
what.
it have to do with who was on the application? Did that have anything to do with it?
No, the application came back on technical review.
Okay.
You need to have this. You didn't have the right.
Right.
One of them was you didn't have the right forms filled out because they had created a new edition of a form. This is what deals with the federal government. What really aggravates you.
Right.
You go online and fill out the form. You print it out. You put it in a packet like they tell you to.
Right.
Then they send it back and say, oh, we revised that form. Oh, by the way, it's not in the electronic version where you go in and fill it out at. You have to go over here to get it. So if you'd gone over here, you'd have gotten it. No, it was purely on technical. It was purely on technical
So
clearance.
safeguards going to be in place to make sure that this one is going to go through after
Right.
investing all this money in you,
Right.
and making sure that this, okay.
Right.
So there are safeguards, and how many of the council members are going to be allowed to be on that application? All of them?
Well, they're not. It's not that they're allowed to. They have to be.
Okay, all of the council
All of
members?
them. When it's a tribe making the application, the entire elected governing body has to make
Has
the
to be,
application.
yes,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I attended a meeting back in 2002 or so in San Francisco. We had 2 representatives from the federal government military doing a presentation to the chief of the Navajos, Denny Leonard, with the top fundraisers in the nation, also on the side, Warm Springs, and they invited me to come sit in. So I went. They had $8 million was allocated by the federal government, military, to assist ethnic minority organizations and individuals to apply for an 8A contract to help train them how to do that. They had to, at the end of the year, they had to turn around and turn back that $8 million because nobody applied for it. This is 12 years ago. And I informed our tribe about it, but nobody ever picked it up.
Well, I know this tribe had an 8A, which nobody really knew about. We put in this tribe had an 8A entity that was formed in, I think, 2002 or 2004. And then it was terminated when the courts ruled that the Delaware tribe didn't exist. And so because you had to be an American Indian tribe, because you were an 8A certified as an American Indian tribe, once it was determined that you were not, and I hate to say it that way, but I mean, that's what, once it was determined you were not, you were kicked out of the program. You weren't allowed to regenerate yourself once you were, and again, I apologize for using the word, once you were re-recognized, because again, I don't believe that's the case with the history of the Delaware. But you had, can I tell one joke? This is not a joke, this is a true story. I think the first time I ever saw your chairman was, I can't remember the year, but y'all probably relate to it because there was a court case, but one of the decisions just come out unrecognizing you again. And I was at a meeting with a lot of tribal leaders and everybody was introducing themselves, and I remember Chet standing up and saying, "My name's Chet Brooks. I went to bed in Delaware and woke up in Cherokee." Because it was literally the night of that court case. That's always stuck with me. I don't know how many times I've told that over the years. But you know, I understand the history. And right, wrong, or indifference, it's all part of the history, and we just have to deal with it. We have to deal with it a lot of times. Because the history is what it is. So, yeah. Long answer to probably a short question.
Could I say something? I was going to ask you a question. Back to Titus's question, he mentioned that there were a lot of shell companies out there that weren't really companies, they were just pass-throughs. Did I not understand, David, that the government does a lot of auditing and really they prevent that from happening today? That doesn't happen like it did years ago because of the audit system, right?
It really happened. There was always an auditing system in place, but when the issue came up with the ANCs, gosh, I guess that's been about 6 years ago now. Now the auditing is much greater, and they're looking specifically for that. If you're sitting there as a shell, you're not going
The
anywhere.
issue didn't come up until they recognized that the tribes were making billions of dollars. And the state of Delaware, that group up there, wanted their cut, basically. They did not want to see the native people making progress.
Well,
That's one of the big issues.
really the more egregious part of it was, and you're right, that is kind of part of it, but the more egregious part was there was a whole system put in place from their elected congressmen on down to where government contracts were being funneled into Alaska specifically for the ANCs. But they didn't really have the ability to perform. And what they were doing was they were funneling through to the huge contributors who lived and worked in Alaska, and the ANCs were getting pennies, and for the most part they were happy. But the fact is, the program was set up for $50 million worth of work for ANCs, and the ANCs were maybe doing 1% of it. Yeah, that was the more egregious part. It was just a massive payoff.
And did they get to, how much were they supposed to get? Were they supposed to get 10 to 20 to, how much percent should those Alaskan Native tribes gotten? Should they have been getting? You said 1%. What was
They should be. Those contracts were set aside for them. They should have been. It should have been 100%.
Okay.
ANCs.
Okay.
On the face of it, it was 100% because they were the face. But behind it, it was 99% was going on out the back door, and 1% was staying
To
with
the
tribes.
government of Alaska?
To private
To
contractors.
private contract.
You know, who turn around and take those profits and make large contributions to elected officials in Congress. Yeah.
I'd just like to say it's a good program, though.
It's an excellent
Yeah,
program, and it's an
right.
excellent program for tribes. Excellent program for tribes.
David, I'd like to actually ask you a question. We want to form this LLC, so we've got the opportunity to do business ASAP. However, by forming it. We are not actually making any commitment whatsoever to an outside group.
No. No.
In other words, we're just forming a company.
And anything, you're
Yeah.
forming it, anything you do will be fully under your control, yeah. Any other way, and you'll never get past the SBA application. If you even thought you wanted to do it another way, you couldn't do it, yeah.
Thank you.
Can I also add, Tahoe is, basically, we're forming it under the environmental program. So those of you know Jimmy Johnson, he had an exceptional program, and he's done a really good job of leading it, and that's our showcase. And what we need to do in our 8A application is to show that we have had success in a tribal program, and we don't have to be in business, we just use that as our stepping stone of showing that we've been doing this work for a number of years. And so that's why it will be an application under environmental. And Takok, as you know, means turtle, and that seems relevant, given our creation story of being born off the turtle bat, then it goes hand in hand with environment.
Well, and another. I didn't mean to talk over somebody. Was somebody else?
No, I was just
I
making
thought
sure
maybe
that
somebody
you
on the
understood
audience
that.
said something because I couldn't tell. Well, what I was going to ask, David, what I understood you said too, we put this operating, these articles together, and then after the articles have been approved, we go to the council itself goes in and talks about the operating agreement. We're not doing an operating agreement tonight. We're just doing the articles of operation. We're not doing the
Articles of incorporation. Well, I noticed that. I know that.
Yeah.
I know that I had sent them both up here because
I know.
theoretically you could do them either way. It doesn't matter. I didn't see a resolution.
Oh,
for the
well, that's
operating agreement.
that's what I was asking, since there wasn't another resolution tonight for the articles of agreement, the operating agreement. Once we do the articles and the council meets, then we finish up and do the articles of, is that what we decided, why we're not doing the operating agreement tonight?
Well, it's actually, though, worded as the last, therefore be it resolved. Tribal Council of Delaware Tribe Indians authorizes waiver of sovereign immunity for Tahoe pt2 LLC to the extent as set forth in the attached
But the-
articles of organization.
You do it, well, that's right. There's two things. The articles of an organization actually create the company. That's what under our act, you file the articles of organization. That's what creates the company. The operating agreement is what you operate the company under.
Right.
And we have an operating agreement that I put together in a resolution. It doesn't matter. It's not on the agenda tonight. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
You can do it in the next meeting. The articles of organization will start the life of the company.
Okay, that's
So
what I meant.
that's our 2 years. We can do the operating, since it's not on the agenda tonight, the operating agreement will be done in the next. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, well, that might make everybody tonight.
Curtis, you had a question?
Yes, sir, to just get clarified on your resolution, in the last whereas, the resolution does indicate that the tribal council, as a member of the LLC on behalf of the tribe, desires to approve the operating agreement attached here to, and then in your therefore be it resolved, authorizes the attached articles of organization to be filed. So
just even for my purposes and understanding, we're approving an articles of organization and an operating agreement, or are you just approving the incorporating under the articles of organization tonight, and then an operating agreement will follow later?
Yes. Yeah, there's only, I didn't see that, there's in the
Last whereas is messed up.
in the
It
last
is.
whereas, it should say.
I apologize, I didn't pick up the attachment of the articles of organization, so I think probably we just need to strike that last and rewrite the resolution for next time.
Whatever's right, David.
No, it's a,
I mean, it says there.
no, the resolution.
And I'm not trying to rain on a parade here, I'm just looking at technical corrections.
But it says attached articles of organization, and I did not attach
It
those.
says, oh, I see what you're saying.
What I'm saying is I didn't pull that off. I pulled the resolution off, but not the attachment.
No, there were two resolutions. This
I've
one-
got the,
There's only one resolution here tonight. though.
Right, no, that's what I mean, I prepared two resolutions.
Okay, I'm sorry. okay. So can we vote on this one and then vote on the other two at the next meeting and still be valid? Or do we need to table this and vote on them all at once?
No, you can create the article, you can vote to create the article of organization tonight.
But should we take out that last
Last
whereas?
paragraph, what says,
I wouldn't,
the next page,
you don't
David.
take it
No,
out, you
The second page, David.
You change, well.
Oh,
it-
you got it all on one page. Okay, never mind.
No, I don't either.
Is the intent that this, instead of reading operating agreement, should have said articles of
Articles of
organization?
It says that on the second page.
Right. It's only this one whereas clause that for some reason says,
And that shouldn't be in there.
the whereas clause should be in there, it should say article of organization as opposed to.
It does.
Operating agreement, yeah.
But the second, be it further resolved, does say articles of organization.
And that part is correct, ma'am, it's just your very last whereas. Those
Oh, the last
words,
whereas.
article,
Okay.
those
Okay, not the-
words,
not the result.
operating agreement,
Okay.
a simple amendment to simply read articles of organization would make the whole thing correct.
Okay.
That's what Mount F does.
You're not really at this point amending it, you're just recognizing.
So on page 1, the very last whereas, it says, it should read, the tribal council as a member of the LLC on behalf of the Delaware Tribe of Indians desires to approve the articles of organization attached here to for the purposes of managing Tahoe too.
As your tribal manager, I would say yes, ma'am, that would be a correct statement.
That's right.
But it doesn't matter if the operating agreement is not agreed to tonight or voted on tonight, because the clock starts ticking with the articles of organization.
That's correct, and actually, most times your operating agreement doesn't come in until sometime later anyway, because most times you just file these things online with the state, if that's what you're creating, and then you hold the meeting sometime later and do that.
Okay.
It's just that it could be done either way, no problem.
And as a point of, I don't know if this is a point of order. No, I guess not a point of order, Chief, but I just wanted to say that before we go incorporating under the LLC laws, we got to go through a quick technical change and take Verna's name off as the tribal council secretary. And, you know, by default, she has full authorization to complete all of the LLC paperwork and use the stamp. I just want to make sure we've got everything
All right, we can do
in
that.
order.
Okay.
That's kind of a technical thing.